Gentlemen, we are back. We are live. I'm Kev Baker. This is the Kev Baker Show. We're moving into hour number 2. And we're shifting gears. What a brilliant guest that was in the first hour, though. Highly informative and a really, really nice guy to boot. Check out Ian Corzine, Heart of the Matter, over on YouTube for all your social media, legal kind of inquiries. Hopefully you'll never fall foul of the legal world when you're on social media, but you never know. Joining me now, though, in hour number 2, there he is, my good friend, the man himself, Charlie Robinson, author of The Octopus of Global Control, a book which has over 500 quotes that, in their own words, shows you that these elites, these politicians, these bloodlines over time have had a plan. And that plan is to form a new world order. Now, I can't urge you all enough to check out that book. Absolutely dynamite. It's full of truth bombs to be launching at people. And really, you know, it's the kind of thing that you can reel off and hand to friends. And, you know, you're not going to really see them glazing over because this is in their own words. I'm not glazed over like my good friend's head over there. Charlie, how you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I am doing very good, sir. And, you know, obviously I like to make fun of that shiny head of yours, but it's only because I love you and because we're good friends now, right?
Yes, of course. That's fine. You can make fun of it. I wish I could grow hair. It's just a thing. It just doesn't happen.
What is this nasty rumor, right, that you are going to be in the UK later this year? 2 of us on the one island? Uh-oh.
I know. It's dangerous. I'm only going to be there for about 5 days, but that's enough time to cause some trouble. So I'm excited to. It's been 30 years since I was in London last, so I'll be there. We'll be smuggling you down south to come hang out. Hopefully, maybe.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And let me tell you, in that 30 years, I can absolutely guarantee it has changed a hell of a lot. Prepare to be very surveilled during your time in London.
Well, I imagine Prince Philip still looks the same.
Like a shriveled up prune somewhere.
Like a gigantic lizard with a black eye.
Don't start me or I'll feel the urge to plug the fact that on May the 28th, our mutual friend now, David Icke, will be coming on the show here on the Kev Baker Show. We'll be getting into his new movie, which is coming out on June the 4th, which is called Renegade. My oh my, is that one term that sums up our friend Mr. Icke. But you know, Charlie here, an author, researcher in his own right. And like I say, all joking aside, he's put together this brilliant work, The Octopus of Global Control. Check out the website, The Octopus of Global Control, as well. Check out all the videos we've done in the past. We've done a lot of work together. And Charlie got in touch with me the other day about a subject that I have heard about and touched on in the past. And it's to do with one of these creepy think tanks. And folks, like I say, all joking aside, there's something very, very serious afoot here. So to get into more of this, Charlie, Deagle, talk to us about what's going on, dude.
Well, I'm finishing up this newest book, and it's about the end of the American Empire. And part of that, you know, we go into a lot of detail about the different reasons that the American Empire can end. A variety of things could happen. Maybe all of them could happen, really. But it brought me back to thinking about remembering that this website, Deagal.com, came out in, I think it was 2015, with this list. And it was sort of comparing not just the United States, but every country in the world, comparing their current population and then planning 10 years out to discuss what their projected population would be, what their military expenditure would be. And Deagal's just a company that does a lot of they manage the aviation, military and aviation purchases, inventories, and things like that. So they'll take a look and see which countries have, you know, what sort of airplanes. Do they need more? Are they going to be ordering more? Have they ordered more that haven't come in yet? So it keeps track of all those things. So it's a military expenditure, military planning type of website. Part of what they, you know, were put on the map for was that somebody got a hold of this outline that they had done showing massive population drops in some very interesting countries. They didn't give much of an explanation for it. It was pretty minor. And then, of course, everyone went around picking apart, is this company real? Is this a real thing? Is this disinformation? Is this, have we stumbled upon something that we're not meant to see? So there was a lot of speculation about it. And I don't know that I don't know that their projections are necessarily cemented in reality, but I do know that the idea of there being massive shifts in population due to a variety of factors is a real thing. It's a real possibility. I got into it in the book. I do believe the American Empire is ending, and I believe that the ramifications of that are going to be catastrophic. And so, in conjunction with that, you've got the Deagle website that goes into detail about all these different countries. And if there was a collapse of the American Empire, of Western, the sort of lead role of the Western countries in running the world as they currently are, what you would see is you would see major population shifts in these countries. So it does actually line up with what you would expect with the end of an empire. And part of what it showed as an example of this, and we'll go into it, I'll go into it sort of country by country that brings us up. And again, this is, as Dr. Joseph Farrell says, high octane speculation, okay? Or we don't know that these are true. We don't know that these are facts. We do know the numbers that they put in their information. So we're going off of those. Those numbers are the real ones that they put out. Now, whether or not this is going to happen, we'll have to see, because the end date for this was 2025. It isn't to say that it all will happen exactly at 2025. It could happen in advance of that. But as an example, the United States population is currently, or as of the printing of this, which was 2015, was listed at 326,620,000. They project that the population of the United States by 2025 will be 99 million. So we're talking about a drop of 227 million people in the United States over 10 years, over their 10-year period. Now, with it, we're talking about 6 years. We've got 6 years left. What would cause that? So we'll go into a little bit more. In the United Kingdom, they have it listed from starting at 65 million, ending up with a population of 14 million. So that's a drop of 51 million. That's 78% of the population of the United Kingdom, according to Deagle, no longer being there come 2025. So that's a huge deal. But then you start to look, what do they have in common? Well, what they have in common is that they're mostly Western-backed countries, a lot of NATO countries, a lot of EU, Italy, 30% reduction in their population, France, 42% reduction. Some might say that's a good thing. South Korea, 27%. Israel, 52%. Ireland, 74%. Canada, 26%. Portugal, 26%. Then you've got the powerhouse like Germany showing dropping in population from 80 million down to 28 million. That is a 65% reduction in population in Germany, 43% in Spain. Australia, 35%, South Africa, 16%, and even Switzerland losing a little more than a third of their population, dropping from 8 million down to just about 3 million. So you've heard about this, Kev, right? Years ago, you've covered this before. I know that this brings out this is going to be a polarizing topic. You're going to have half the people saying this is utter nonsense and why are you guys talking about this? But there might be more to it. Of course, if it comes out and these numbers are factual, you will have the disinformation agents trying to submarine it, say, oh, this is nonsense. It was proven years ago to be baloney. This is some kook, with a tinfoil hat on in his one-bedroom apartment writing all this stuff, and he has no connection to it. Well, maybe not. When you talked about it before, what was the response that you got from people?
It's one thing that I never seen been fully debunked.
Right.
Never seen it fully debunked. And when it comes to think tanks, what I've learned over time is you should really pay attention to these things. Now, keep an open mind, obviously, do further research. But like you say, these numbers, this isn't like just small percentage points being kind of wiped off. This is huge, Charlie, absolutely huge. And you look at the South American countries, and There is Brazil has a couple of million increase, but Argentina, they lose numbers. So it's not as if there's a massive displacement of this over 200 million out of the US. This is pretty grim stuff. And obviously in our circles, we talk a lot about depopulation agendas. Yep. Well, this certainly fits into that, sir.
For sure. The numbers on just on these major countries that I was talking about, not even really including South America, there were some drops there, but I just focused on some that took major hits. The reduction worked out to about 450 million. So you would expect that there would be an increase of 450 million somewhere else. So take a look at the countries that experience, according to Deagle, population increases. They're the ones that you would expect. Mostly you would expect this just due to natural sort of birth. Actually, China wasn't on the list. It increased, but just by a little bit, almost negligible amount. But India increased by 61 million. That's what you would expect when you go from 1,280,000,000 up to 1,341,000,000, which is an increase of 61 million people over 10 years. Normally you'd say, oh, that's astronomical. But in India, it actually kind of works. So that might just be due to population increases, birth rates, and things like that. You go to their neighbor in Pakistan, you have an increase of just about 14 million. Philippines, just a little under 13 million. Bangladesh, 20 million. You would expect that there. They have high birth rate. It's a high percentage because you're going from 157 million to 178 million, but still high birth rates. Bangladesh is obviously known for that. And maybe a surprising one is Egypt. Egypt was high on this list. It went from 97 million up to 105 million people. But altogether, this is only an increase of a little over 100 million. So you've got a drop of 450 million. You have an increase of 100 million. Somewhere, a third of a billion people are not accounted for. So the question is, where does Deagle think they're going? They're not going to other countries. So that means they're being removed from this planet. The question is, why? What is happening? What do they know that we don't know? If anything, this may be speculation on their part, but let's speculate on their numbers. What do they know? What could cause this? Well, obviously a massive war could cause this, but they don't claim that that's coming. And a pandemic could do damage here, but they don't claim that's coming as well. In North America, to see massive numbers like that, I mean, Yellowstone could do that. But that wouldn't account for an increased depopulation in other Western countries in Europe. You might say, well, it's Northern Hemisphere, and so it's, if Yellowstone went off, everything in that area would be impacted. Well, if that's the case, then China would see a decrease as well. And Canada would see a massive one as well as Mexico. And we didn't see a huge drop in Mexico, according to their numbers. So if it's not that, it could be Western country related chemtrails. It could be 5G for all we know. But I think what really the trigger point with this is going to be, and it's the trigger point that I put in the new book that's coming out, that is the loss of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. I think that will have, I know for a fact, that will have a devastating financial impact on the West. It will plunge the value of the dollar by 30%, literally overnight, probably another 20% in the months after that. And it would have a chain reaction of it. It would bring down anything connected to it as far as Western banks.
Charlie, how does that look when it plays out on the streets? Is that banks closing, things like that?
Yeah, so it plays out like this. You get a Friday afternoon, the mainstream media reports that there's been a virus that's impacted the banking computer systems, and that they hope to have it all sorted out by Monday. Monday comes, they don't have it sorted out by Monday. They say, well, it'll be Tuesday, maybe Wednesday at the latest. This would be a bank run. This would be where the banks are locked. You don't have access to your money physically to be able to go to the bank and get it. You don't have access to it via wire transfer. I think eventually, over the weeks, it would come out that there had been some sort of issue with the dollar no longer being tied no longer being seen as the world reserve currency. I mean, everything in the media would be a complete lie. The government would be lying. The banks would be lying. It would just be total, utter disinformation. But the end result would be that the value of the dollar would fall so much that its purchasing power would be wiped out on a vast level. You would have that would then spread to pension funds, savings accounts, IRAs, 401ks, all the savings accounts would be instantly wiped out. Not to mention the fact that it would trigger the derivatives, which would have a cascading effect. It would literally bring down the Western banking system. This might be part of the reason why you see things like Saddam Hussein says, well, we're going to sell oil in exchange for euros instead of the US dollar. And then he gets democracy dropped on him by 50,000 from 50,000 feet to take care of him. You have Muammar Gaddafi coming out and saying that he would like to do the African dinar, a gold-backed currency, that he would allow oil to be purchased using that instead of the US dollar. Next thing you know, it's raining cruise missiles on him. So this is what happens. You see Venezuela saying, yeah, we'd sell our oil for something other than US dollars. And then you've got the CIA trying to install Guaido in there. I mean, this is what happens. This would be met with fierce resistance by the United States. But I think what's happening is that the United States is overplaying its hand with a variety of countries. They're really making enemies with China and Russia and Iran. And these countries, not just those, but others, are getting kind of sick of dealing with the United States, and they're just random sanctions that they place on countries that don't do what they're supposed to do. And I think what you're going to have is you're going to have trading that happens when everyone kind of gets together and says, we're sick of this. I have oil, you have gold or yuan or rubles or whatever. Let's work a deal here. They can't kill all of us, and this is what one country will do it, and then that will embolden other countries, and then it will have a spreading effect. Once that happens, and there's nothing that the United States can do to stop it, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a disaster in the United States. And, a lot of the countries around the world will be sitting on the sidelines applauding, going, well, you guys shouldn't have been such jerks to everybody else because you're kind of getting what you had coming to you. And I hate to say that as an American because I don't want that to happen, but I'm afraid that that's what is going to happen. I'm afraid that's the future, is that the countries around the world are tired of this. They're tired of having the United States use the SWIFT banking system that locks out certain countries until they comply with the way the United States wants you to say, oh, you can't deal with Russia. What? Why can't we deal with Russia? Well, because the United States says you can't deal with Russia. So this is starting to wear on countries. It's been wearing on countries for a long, long time. But there's going to be a time when they come together and they all say, we're done. We're not listening to you anymore. If I want to conduct business with another country and another currency to sell my oil, I'm going to do it. And if you want to get into a war about it, then bring it on. Russia might say that. Definitely China would say that. And so the United States hammer that they've been using is this petrodollar system. And the petrodollar system is literally a house of cards that is waiting for one of the cards to be pulled out from under it. And it could be something. It could be the problems that we're having with Saudi Arabia. It could be Iran being emboldened to deal with Russia directly and sell their oil. One of those things could bring down the whole system. And when it comes, it'll happen like every other empire unraveling, slowly and then all at once.
And, it's inevitable, right? The way the money system works, the fractional banking, the fiat money system, things do collapse. And of course, we know that on the horizon, that they would love to bring in a cashless society. And this would be one way of going about it. All of this crashes, Charlie, and we move on to crypto coin or something like that. So talk about the actual monetary system, because, it's Jordan Maxwell that kind of explained it to me way back in the day. But these things are designed bubbles, derivatives. They all collapse, right?
For sure. Yeah. The people have always said, well, why would they want to collapse the system? They have so much money at stake here. Well, when you are the central banks, when you're in the Federal Reserve and the East, and the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, these are private banks. The scam has been that they say, well, the Federal Reserve is a government agency. That was the lie when I was a kid. Then it became, well, it's a quasi-government agency. It's not. It's a private bank. It's not a quasi. It has nothing to do with the government. It was named the Federal Reserve Bank because that name makes it sound like it's a government bank, but it's not. Thomas Jefferson had this problem with central banks 200 years ago. He threw them all out. So there is precedent for the United States to be without a central bank. They threw them all out, and then of course through The Creature from Jekyll Island from G. Edward Griffin's great book back in 1910, having these meetings in Jekyll Island, Georgia, to hammer this all out, which went into law in 1913 when a corrupted Woodrow Wilson passed it through. That came in at the exact same time that the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, the tax collection agency, was formed the exact same year as the Federal Reserve Bank. Wow, what a coincidence. Well, here's the scam. Here's how it plays out. The Federal Reserve creates money out of thin air as a private bank. They loan that money to the United States government at interest. That interest is due by the next year. The United States government sets up the Internal Revenue Service tax collection agency as a mechanism to go collect everyone else's money to pay the interest on the debt owed to the Federal Reserve. These two things go hand in hand. This is why it's a scam. The IRS collects money to pay the Federal Reserve interest. So the Fed creates money out of nothing, loans it to the government at interest, which means they're making money on this. And then the IRS goes and grabs us by the ankles, shakes us upside down, collects all of our money, and then gives it to the Fed. They're not giving it, they give it to the government, but it goes to the Fed to pay the interest on this. So we're all thinking, oh, well, our taxes go to pay for roads and pay for that. No, they do not. They go to pay the interest on the debt. And so the only people making money on this scam are the private bankers that own the Federal Reserve. So this is how the scam is set up. It's very devious. You have to give them credit for figuring this out. They had this plan working before back in the late 1700s, early 1800s when Thomas Jefferson came in and smashed it because he understood what was going on. They had to go underground for a while, but it took 100 plus years, but it came back in 1913 as the Fed, and now this is part of the mechanism. So this America gets all bent out of shape about 22 trillion in debt, 21 trillion in debt. How are we ever going to pay this back? Well, we owe it to the Federal Reserve, so I don't have a problem with not paying them. We've invaded countries over less than this. I can't believe that the United States hasn't invaded the Federal Reserve. Well, the reason why they haven't is because the Federal Reserve controls the government. That's it.
11-9, you know how we do dates back to front over here in Europe?
Yes.
11-9, and it cleverly gets around any algorithms that listen. There was a lot of stuff happened in the aftermath of that, and there's a lot of talk about a massive gold heist. And then a couple of years later, you have the Germans, they come along, right, give us our gold back, please, America are holding on to it for safekeeping. We've got a problem there. It might take us some time to get that back to you. I mean, that is how precarious things are, literally. Talk to this, man.
Yeah, the gold situation. Well, Roosevelt declared that everyone had to turn in their gold, right? They had to turn in their gold, and they would be paid $20 per ounce. This was back in the 30s, right? So it was gold confiscation, and if you had tangible gold and you didn't hand it over to the government, then you could go to jail for this. So once they had accumulated all this gold, to the point where they felt they had most of it, they immediately revalued it at $35 an ounce. So they made 75% profit on it overnight just by making that claim. So the government is not above stealing your assets for themselves. They've done it before. They have absolutely no problem doing this. So when people say, well, they would never do this, or you could never take my bank account. Read the fine print in the paperwork when you signed your bank account. The minute you insert money into your bank account, it becomes the property of the banks and you become an unsecured creditor. That is the worst position you can be in. They literally own your money. It's not yours when you put it in the bank.
It's what you find older generation, some of them still stash their money under their bed. And people laugh at that, but that's the safest place at times where it could be, And we're going to come back on the other side because we were talking about Deagle, depopulation, and yes, a monetary collapse, that is certainly something that could trigger bigger events. But what else could be on the horizon? I'll take Charlie to my favourite place after the break, the island of Kev speculation. And we'll take a look at all of the other things that may result in what can only be called a drastic reduction in the population. You know, that number of people that are disappearing is very close to the same number that was put forth on the Georgia Guidestones as to being a perfect number to live in utopia. 500 million people. 500 million people near enough wiped off on the Deagle think sheet for 2025. 500,000 people, or 500 million people on the Guidestones. Maybe we need to switch this round. Maybe that's the number that will be 2 guests on the show. So yes, final segment of today's show with Charlie Robinson, author of The Octopus of Global Control. Check him on Facebook, on Twitter. And he's got a website, The Octopus of Global Control. We're talking about Deagle, depopulation numbers. Charlie, during the break, we were thinking about what else could be going on. And we were talking about Venezuela and the potential for something kicking off there. What do you think of that?
Well, you've got the recipe for disaster there. You've got United States, a massive pile of oil, and Russia as an ally of Venezuela. So what could possibly go wrong, right? Isn't this the same thing that kicked off Iraq? We have oil. You have Syria that now, they found oil in the Golan Heights, and Russia's backing Syria, and we're against Syria, and all these contrived things that are pretend issues that are supposed to be about politics, but they're really about oil. They're really about asset allocation and confiscation, and theft. And so, yeah, I mean, Venezuela to me, and I said this 6 months ago, and it's not a big stretch, but Venezuela is ripe for a war to kick off over that. I don't want one, of course, and it would be under false pretenses, but that never stopped maniacs like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton and crazy people like that say, start beating the war drums, and then doing that in conjunction with the mainstream media, continuing to frame the topic of not should we start a war with Venezuela, but when should we start a war? Should we start it tomorrow, next week, or next month? Those will be the only 3 options on the table.
That's the worrying thing, when you start to see that, because we know the media over in America particularly propagandized Obama. He repealed the kind of propaganda. He kind of, I think he slackened the laws around that, didn't he? And when you see the media talking about war, they're preparing the public, dude, and that's worrying. But it does fit in with a lot of the geopolitical stuff going on, and unfortunately, it's a likely scenario, or it would be something I would put on my top 3 of a factor that could cause such dramatic population numbers to dwindle.
Yeah, it really could. And you look at so you dig into who Deagle is. So it's this company, right? It's this company that manages these information about defense contractors and whether they need to order more airplanes or more bombs or whatever. But Edwin Deagle is a guy. His name is spelled a little differently. People think that this has something to do with him, or at least it might have something to do with him. He spells his last name Deagle as opposed to EL. But he was the Undersecretary of the Air Force under Bill Clinton, and he was the assistant to the Secretary of Defense. And he was also Deputy Secretary of Defense, all under Bill Clinton. He's a director of international relations for the Rockefeller Foundation. And he wrote the foreword to a book called World Energy Survey by somebody named Ruth Sivard. And it was about a mass exodus from the United States as a prediction. So this is a guy, he's also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. What a surprise. So
Whoa. Rewind. He's a member of what, Charlie?
The Council on Foreign Relations, the think tank that is tightly connected with the media, big business, banks, and governments. So,
yeah, I mean, this is where Hillary Clinton would go down the street and get her orders from, right?
Yep.
The same CFR, just making sure,
Yeah, one of the few times that she was being truthful in a public statement is when she said that she's excited that the new CFR building was down the street in Manhattan because it wouldn't be far for her to go to get told what to do, which is, of course, the truth. I mean, this is how it goes. These councils, these think tanks and organizations like this, they have all these not just people but industries contributing to it, and so they shape this narrative, and then they hand that off to the media, and the media starts to formulate this. They start to hammer it out through repetition every night on the nightly news, and then, like you said, after 10 months of hearing this over and over again, you start to think, yeah, let's go get Venezuela. Let's go in there. And then you pull someone aside and say, why? Why do you want to get Venezuela? And you go, because I don't know why. I don't know. I feel like we should be in a war with them. They're awful. Their president is hurting people in his country. Well, geez, I mean, if that was the only criteria for starting a war, then why aren't we invading Saudi Arabia? Why aren't we invading Washington, D.C.? They're doing more damage to population than the president of Venezuela. So you understand that it is just nonsense. It's not a real thing. It's the humanitarian intervention, or the spreading democracy. These Orwellian terms that don't mean what we're told that they mean. But through constant repetition in the media, it starts to not only seem like a reasonable idea, but you get to the point where people are actually demanding this. When are we going to have this war? Hurry up. We've been talking about it for so long. When are we going to have it? And then psychopaths like John Bolton sitting in the back smoking a cigar saying, I told you I could kick this thing off.
And, we're quite aware of what the media does. And I often say on the show, it's not us they're trying to convince. It's just their target audience. If they can convince enough of them and construct this reality for them, like you say, eventually there'll be people absolutely foaming at the mouth, demanding some kind of military action. And the best thing we can do is just try to point out this to people, try and point out the propaganda that has been used in the past. I think that's the best we can really try and do. But I'm looking at Deagle here, going back to this website. We talked about the potential for possibly war, stuff like that. This looks like something straight out of the military-industrial complex, April the 8th, they've got a PDF all about hypersonic BrahMos missile range. It's all military shows, artillery hardware, stuff like that. I know they don't say directly that they expect a war or anything, Charlie, but when you see these people talking about this, I think you have to pay attention.
Well, yeah, of course, you have to pay attention, and hopefully this is all speculation about nothing, right? Nothing comes of this. This is some organization that was, has been clinging to this concept that there's going to be massive depopulation, and they're wrong about it. That's the best case scenario, is that they're just maniacs, right? They got it wrong.
Maybe it's John Bolton's blog.
Right. John Bolton's blog, though, would detail exactly how he was going to kill all these people, and he would rank it in terms of which one he preferred the most. But of course, like anything John Bolton does, he would never actually do it himself because he's too much of a chicken to get in there and grab a M16 and a helmet and some boots and go do. He wants to kill everybody, but he doesn't want to do it himself. So this Deagle, once again, maybe it's all just nonsense. Maybe it's disinformation. But in the event that it is accurate, you're talking about losing 7 out of 10 people in the United States and almost 8 out of 10 people in the United Kingdom. What would cause that? What really would cause that? Well, I in my book,
I'll throw another one at you, because these kind of numbers you're looking at, maybe pandemic / bioweapon.
That's where I was going with it. In my book, I've got Eric Pionka, who is a professor at University of Texas and teaching biological sciences, talking about how he prefers airborne Ebola because it's so great. It kills. He says for every one person that survives, he'll have to bury 9 people. And he's talking about how he loves airborne Ebola as his best depopulation tool. I mean, this is psychopathic talk. And of course, he's a professor at college. So you've got kids that are going to this class.
He gets a standing ovation, and there's like people almost crying in the audience when he's talking about this, isn't it? Yeah, I think I've seen that clip.
Yeah, this is, so airborne Ebola. Let's just go with this crazy depopulation agenda people that are talking about this, talking about how that's their favorite. He actually said, that's my airborne Ebola is my favorite. Okay, yeah, it's my favorite too. Everybody loves airborne Ebola, geez. But so this is the sort of mentality that you've got some people that are actively looking for ways to make this happen. So airborne Ebola has a kill rate of 50 to 60%. Well, that's pretty close, right? Could it be that? It sounds crazy. Oh, they would. I mean, they're going to spray airborne Ebola. What are they trying to kill all of us? Well, yeah. Haven't you noticed that the governments are trying to kill everybody? I look up all the time and see chemtrails, see them spraying, and people will say, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory." It's not a conspiracy theory. You can literally look up and see them spraying. Now, what's in there, that might be up for debate, but the fact that they're spraying is not theoretical in any way. It's a fact. It's happening. It's actually, John Brennan even came out. Not that John Brennan is one to tell the truth, but I mean he is on the record admitting that the CIA has decided that they are going to start this program. Yeah, we're going to start the aerosol spraying, and he talks about that. Well, they started it a long time ago, John. Of course, he knows that. But so to say, well, airborne Ebola wouldn't happen because in order to do that, they'd have to spray us all. Check. And second of all, they'd have to want to kill us all. Check. We've already got two here. They'd have to have the ability to do it. Check. They've got that.
Harvard as well. They're now openly talking about, using chemtrails, trying this thing called, chemtrails, spraying chemicals to, help with the climate change problems that we're going to
dim the sun. Yeah. No thanks. The sun has been just fine to us. Let's let the sun do its thing. We kind of need that. Let's not mess with the sun. I know you guys are all at Harvard and you think you're pretty smart and you've got great degrees and everything, but let's leave the sun alone, for God's sake. This might be one of those things that we look back on when we're starting again as amoebas, going, should have left the sun alone. Damn thing wound up killing everybody else in the last extinction event.
I'm just shaking my head here. I mean, what can you say? But, one other thing we can move on to and look at as well. And listen, folks, this isn't us fear-mongering. I know people will say that, but we're looking at these statistics and we're speculating as to what could cause such dramatic drops. And we've all been harping on, pardon the pun, about something called 5G for some time now. And just yesterday I was fuming, absolutely fuming. Some may say, it's a good thing. I don't see it as such, and I'll explain why. But Brussels became the first city to haul all their 5G technology. Good thing, right? Think about where it is. It's Brussels. It's the seat of the EU, where all of these fat cat bureaucrats who are picking up hundreds of bucks a day for sitting doing nothing and ruling over us, the very top of which are unelected officials, let me remind you. They're the ones that are not wanting to bask in the frequencies which 5G brings along with it. So you compare Brussels, this blanket ban, let's hold the horses here, we don't know what the health effects are, to me in Glasgow. Glasgow University, first 5G university in the whole of the UK. We were one of the first cities over here to trial 5G. Liverpool, one of their hospitals going fully 5G. So this is why I was fuming yesterday, Charlie. Brussels.
Well, at least the patients in Liverpool will be at the hospital as already when they're getting radiated by 5G. They won't have far to go to have their organs replaced.
Well, that there is very true. I can't disagree with that. But your thoughts on 5G? Because when you look at the countries involved, let's look at Germany, UK, United States, all going down the 5G road.
All on this list too. Yeah, it's a very easy way to clean us out. Yeah, of course, Brussels decides, well, we want to have a little bit more testing on this 5G stuff before we roll it out where we all work. Yeah, well, that's convenient. They don't give a damn about Glasgow, of course, because they're going to use you guys as like test case, which I'm laughing, but it's obviously it's not funny.
No, I laugh as well. It's all you can do at this point.
Yeah, well, or that, or take baseball bats and knock down the transmitters when they put them up. But I'm not advocating that, of course. That'll get me thrown in jail. But this, I think people are saying, well, 5G is great. Then I can get my video faster. Well, maybe. But you also, it's like standing in front of a millimeter wave technology, the spinning thing that they have in the United States airports, the the body scanner where you put your hands up and everything. It's using the same technology as 5G. And those are dangerous for you. Michael Chertoff put those in all the airports, and he is actively trying to kill everybody on this planet. He doesn't give a damn about you. That technology is very dangerous. And you and I both have been to the Ike presentation where he gets into it in great detail. And I think people are starting to wake up to the 5G thing. Not fast enough, of course. It hasn't been tested. They literally admit that they have not tested the 5G technology to see if it has negative effects on humans. Oh, I don't know. Maybe add that to the list of things to do. I mean, they're marketing it like crazy. They haven't tested it to make sure it's safe for people. I mean, I think that would be a bit of information that the general public would be interested to know, right? But we don't get that.
Donald Trump loves it. Give me 5G, 6G, 7G, all the way up to 10G. You know, Donald Trump, he's the man.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the best. We've got to have the best. I want 1 million G.
Well, of course, everyone here knows I hate all politicians, so I don't.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm totally unbiased and can go after all of them. But let me move on again then, because I suppose I am a purveyor of fear porn, because there's a lot of talk now as well, and rightly so, about magnetic north and the poles being on the wander, the magnetic fields doing this, doing that. The sun could do this or that. Pole shift, Charlie, pole shift. We've had researchers in the past who have allegedly shown maps of what the new USA might look like after some kind of pole shift event, rising sea levels. What do you think of this one, man?
Pole shift, EMP, solar flare, natural EMPs, right? I mean, that could come from a pole. That would be catastrophic. We can't even imagine what that would do. Not to mention all the electronics. I mean,
my head sometimes, we were talking jokingly about 5G a moment ago, taking out a transmitter, but people who talk about an EMP, I don't think they realize the ramifications of what happens when all of everything goes dead. Planes in the sky, hospitals. That's catastrophic, dude.
I mean, we would be back to the Bronze Age in an afternoon. I would be back, like rubbing two rocks together, trying to start fire. I mean, it would be, if you're somebody like me that has almost no wilderness survival skills, you're a goner, right? That might account for it. That certainly could account for it. And that could be a contrived event. It could be a man-made event that sets off an EMP. It could be a natural solar flare, which does the exact same thing. I mean, had the Carrington effect. Could be, could be one of those things, and that would, of course, wipe out a percentage of the population. I don't know what Deagle thinks they know. It would be really nice if they would come right out and say it instead of being shy about it. But I suppose if they actually have information about something, then that would lead me to think that it wouldn't be a natural event, because you couldn't predict something like a solar flare or a natural EMP or a pole, magnetic pole shift reversal. Those things happen randomly, apparently. So if they're predicting it, then my thoughts are that it would have to be something predictable, right? So it would have to be a man-made event. But the idea of a pole shift, a magnetic shift, would be, I don't even know what that, I mean, obviously it would have catastrophic effects, but I don't even know what that would look like. I don't know how long it would take humanity to dig out from something like that.
No, you're absolutely correct, man. And, you could look at so many different things, the times we're living in, this technological age. You have to bring up AI and the potential threat that, of opening up portals to other dimensions with a D-Wave and welcoming who knows what through them. Who knows what is happening at this point, Charlie? But, speaking to you over the months, over the years probably now, I've come to really respect your research. So when you bring this to me, having looked at Deagle, like you say, we don't know exactly what this is. However, I think people out there need to pay attention to any of these kind of think tanks that we come across, dig deeper and see if we can make any connections, because I do think Deagle is very, very relevant. I really do. It's just my gut feeling. I've never done that hard research that you've done. But when you looked at them, I mean, did you come away confidently thinking this is something pretty substantial?
I think that if their job is to forecast what the United States government needs in the way of military systems, specifically avionics, they would be in a position to know something, right? That because that's their job to know it. If they are making predictions that the population is going to drop by 70% in the United States, then that impacts how many planes the United States would have to order, how much money they would have, how would they even exist in their current state like this. A lot of speculation about, what this would mean, but if their numbers are correct, it would mean that the world would be totally upside down and different. And, I have fear because they say that, the numbers don't show a correlation in population rising in these other countries by anything more than just 100 million. With a decrease of 450 million, you've got a big problem there. But I think taking that out of the equation, it might not be the worst thing if the United States is no longer running the world, because they've done such a bad job with it in the last 70 years that they've been running it. And part of the reason why they've been able to run it is because they have control of the financial system through the petrodollar arrangement. If that were to go away, their control would go away. That might mean that people die due to banking collapse and all the things that go along with that. That would definitely happen. But there would also be migration engines would be turned up in reverse. They'd be spitting people out. People would be getting the hell out of the country as fast as they could. And what would that do to not just North America, but to the rest of the world? Because of how we're set up now with this global network, everything's interconnected. What happens in Glasgow affects people in New York City. A collapse in your economy would trigger collapses throughout the UK, and then would eventually spread to the United States. Something like this happening in the United States would impact the rest of the world, and it would happen almost instantaneously as far as the monetary system's concerned. So there's massive implications for this. If this is true, if it's even slightly true, this would be so disruptive that it would literally change the world.
Now, you mentioned the Rockefeller Institute earlier on. Another one springs to mind that people should keep an eye on, Tavistock. Did you do any cross research to see if there's any other projections by any of these other known ones out there at all?
No, I don't know that there's anybody else that is.
I've certainly not heard of anyone else with, like, Europe 2030 with the UN agenda, things like that, but no actual population projection.
There was one study that came out of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is a big time globalist university, but it was pretty easily detected that it was funded by groups connected to the Club of Rome, and it was about climate change, and they were just pumping them with these numbers about how climate change was going to happen in 12 years and everything was going to be gone. But that one didn't take too much digging into to find that there was some serious questions about the background of the people that were paying for that research. So I took that out of the equation.
That's one of these groups you're not meant to talk about. The Club of Rome, the Committee of 300. I've spoke about them umpteen times, dude, and nothing's ever happened to me now. It's like Facebook jail. I've never been sent there either. I think I must be doing something wrong. Or, really, I am working for the Russians.
It's probably a combination of the two.
But, no doubt Russia will be to blame for anything that kicks off in the world.
Oh, of course. Of course. No matter what it is, a legitimate issue, if it's a natural progression where the banking system or where the petrodollar falls apart, no matter what happens, Russia will be blamed for it for sure, because the boogeyman needs to be there. The military and information terror complex needs a boogeyman to fight against. They can't justify $1 trillion a year military budget without there being some external threat. So if there isn't a Russia, they have to create one. And my feeling is that they have created it, because I'm not afraid of Russia, but I think the media is trying to make us afraid of Russia.
Good man. I'll give you your paycheck after the show, right? You take rubles, don't you? Yeah.
Of course, comrade. Whatever you got.
Charlie, I love hanging out with you, dude, and I really appreciate you taking time out. I know you're writing a new book right now. the audience, they certainly appreciate you coming along here as well.
The audience is great. I have fun with them and in the comment section on the videos and things like that. Yeah, we always have a good time.
You see, we genuinely quite like to hang out, so it's coming on air. It's quite natural. And again, I just want to thank you for your time and let people know where they can find all of your work, dude.
Oh, if you like the book and you want to buy it or send it to a friend of yours, you can buy it from that creepy pervert Jeff Bezos at his store. Or you can go to barnesandnoble.com and get it there. Or if you like the ebook, you can just come to my website, donate $10 to me, and I'll send you the e-publishing version and the PDF. So that's the octopus of globalcontrol.com.
Dude, somebody swapped out Bezos. That is not the same Bezos that was years ago. He looks like he's some kind of sex robot from South Korea.
Yeah. I certainly hope so. He's all jacked up on HGH and everything and shaved his head and he's, hooking up with TV chicks and getting divorced. I mean, I can't wait. This is going to be fantastic.
He wanted to borrow your look, man. That's what it
is. Yeah. Hey, babe, you want to go to outer space on my spaceship? Yeah. I mean, I can't even wait for all the stuff he's got planned. This is going to be the greatest tabloid event ever.
There's him. There's Elon Musk, desperate to get off the planet right now. Okay, they project further, into the 2030s, but you have to wonder, what's the race to get out of here? And of course, that's me, doom and gloom, a nice negative note to leave all the listeners on. Nah, man. Folks, these numbers might be drastic, but we don't know what they mean. So I wouldn't be overly worrying, but certainly let's do some more digging, all of us, on what this means, if we can find anything else out there that might line up with it. And I'm sure Charlie will be back this time next month and we can get into a lot more of this stuff, right?
You got it.
So, folks, until tomorrow, Jojo's Backer on tomorrow, wherever you are. Remember, I love each and every one of you. FR and then touch that dial.